Hi everyone, it's Aidan Clifford here today again, your modern workplace and security business manager at Pax8. Once again, I'm joined by James Davis, who's the director over at our academy business. G'day James, how are you today?
Yeah, I'm going well. Thanks for having me back. You haven't booted me off yet, so that's always a good start.
No, yeah, you've got a repeat offender for the modern workmates, so it's glad to have you back. But I'll need to get some referrals to see who else we can get on this ship before too long as well.
I'm going to guess most people are going to get sick of my voice and sick of my face pretty quickly, so it's probably a good idea.
I'll avoid that one. I'll leave that one for the audience to decide. But but thanks again very much for joining me. There's been a lot on this week, a lot coming up at this time of year. I just really wanted to connect. We've obviously got everyone's favourite time of year, end of financial year, when the fires are starting to burn. Everyone's focusing in on how to close out the year successfully, but then also planning, looking at what the opportunities are going to be for the next financial year. And doing the dance between those two priorities is obviously a bit of a challenge. And then we also had Microsoft Build thrown into the mix, which happened on this week, which had some pretty interesting announcements around what's available from the technology and development perspective from Microsoft over the next 12 months and where some of those opportunities may lie. Yeah, did you have a chance to catch up on much of the Build announcements as they came out?
I'm not as attuned to it as you, so I want to hear what you heard, and I want to explore that in terms of turning into how that's going to impact the MSP space, because Build's not really aimed at MSPs, is it?
Yeah, no, it's very much focused at the sort of the technology leaders, the developers. A lot of the ISVs are very much more interested in it. But I think what it does show is where's the market going and what's going to come through to the MSP channel in years to come. Once it's sort of goes, there's a lot of private previews, a lot of public previews, but when it goes into GA, how do we then take advantage of that? So I'm not too sure who else is following along, but it just seemed to be. I saw someone describe it as everything AI everywhere all at once. So it's pretty much seemed to describe everything's an AI product now. Copilot's being attached to pretty much everything, and over the next 12 months, that's going to really explode in that space. So my main takeaway, and I think Microsoft does this cyclically, is the call to action for developers to jump on the train. They did it with Azure a couple of years ago. They did it with Power Platform as well over the years as well. So looking into how that can enable sort of the SMB space, really thinking about how can it improve business processes. How can you integrate a lot of the rich language models into things like Power BI, Power Automate, and really helping non-technical users get the most out of those solutions. I know that you've been speaking to quite a few people around the opportunity of AI or the TBC opportunity of AI. Yeah, what's the sort of the general take amongst the market at the moment?
It's not there yet. It's all too fresh. Like what you just said there. With the Build stuff around getting developers on board to start creating new solutions and leveraging that sort of technology. So for a lot of us in the practical space, whether it's SIs or MSPs and the services that we deliver, it's not impacting us yet. But what's important to look at in this is becoming a leader in your client ecosystem and getting ahead of this. So all the things that Microsoft has pushed in the past, and you highlighted that very well. They do this in cycles of flagging that something's coming, and then they know which, the ISV community and developer space where to push that first, and then we know it's typically going to be another 18 months till more solutions come out. Those type of cycles. What that drives is a really big market awareness for the wider business community. And often MSPs are the last to act. So if I use back in the past SBS Server to Office 365, the majority of the market didn't really embrace Office 365 until they couldn't buy SBS servers anymore, and all those SBS servers that we sold became end of life. So as our value prop's changing, what's important with the AI space is a lot of our business clients are hearing all this information and all the impact that it's going to have on their business, but they don't have anyone like local pragmatically talking to them about like the real implications of it. So my advice to MSPs and SIs now is you don't need to create a productized offering. It's not really there yet. But understanding the technology and be able to talk to your clients and become that thought leadership person in that space is going to set you up for a longer term. They're going to know you're the one to talk about the latest technology. You're providing that advice, and then when there is something to actually sell and deliver, they will buy it from you. So I think that's my advice on the AI side.
Yeah, awesome. No, I completely agree. I think, yeah, going back to the cycle point, you mentioned SBS to Office 365. I definitely saw it, and it could be argued that it's still in the phase of doing that with the on-prem to Azure discussion. A lot of the partners that I saw as the early adopters were the ones that their partners were saying, or their customers rather, were saying, I want to go into the public cloud. I want to go into Azure specifically. Can you take me there? Or if not, I'm going to find someone who can. And so that was obviously a really compelling event for those partners to look into how they can do that, utilizing their distribution partner at the time to navigate that journey, and just making sure they're surrounding themselves with the right resources to navigate the ambiguity, I suppose. And so AI is another, as you say, a great example of that. Of expect the inbound calls, expect the conversations to pop up in your monthly reviews with your leading customers, and just have a practical conversation around where is this going to impact your business. Where does this shiny new toy fit into the bandolier or the utility belt that you already offer them, and how does that practically sort of offer something to them at the end of the day, other than just getting excited over something that's new?
And the threat's going to be long term. Is like if you don't understand this stuff, like even outside of being a thought leader, what's happening in the Microsoft platform with things like Copilot is it's driving a lot more self-service. So the things that we might have provided in the past that provide value and people would call us to do, it's really enabling the end users to do things like use the Power BI as an example. I know most MSPs don't use Power BI, but it's a good example of the end users will have all this information at their fingertips. They'll be able to ask questions and build a lot of the stuff themselves. And as our traditional IT support gets more and more commoditized, unless we're there helping them, enable them to do these sort of activities earlier on and providing a whole lot more advice and context, we're going to get cut off from a lot of opportunities if we're not on the front foot. So, that sort of pragmatic, shiny tool stuff is at the moment, or what you should be doing in your business is starting to try and leverage this sort of technology yourself. And most of us already use M365 as our platforms inside our business. Is start to look and leverage and play with these sort of things internally, and then understand it and be able to talk to it. And then as you can create more productized offerings off the back of that, you can. That's where you're going to get a lot of opportunity in the future.
Yeah, totally. And one of the things that I think, sort of taking a step back from that, is how do you start creating baselines for yourself within your business? How do you start setting that foundation to mean that you can take advantage of the opportunity that's there today, but use the clues that Microsoft's providing through events like Build as to where it's going into the future. So as you're creating a stack, 1, then 2.0, and in the future and updating that way, how do you then accommodate those changes so you can grow naturally, maintain your profitability, and maintain your scalability as well? One of the examples that probably from Build was through Microsoft Teams. There's a big adoption piece at the moment, and these solutions are only as successful as the organizations that adopt them. So might be able to switch it all on for your customers, but if they don't know how to use it and they don't have the change management behind it, then ultimately they're going to be in the same place that they are today. So one of the announcements at Build was around live sharing of resources through Teams. So we can do it a bit today where you can take control of like the slide deck that someone's presenting, or you can zoom in a little bit. They're actually going to be enhancing that using Copilot. So the developers will be creating third-party apps that you can then integrate a lot more with and collaborate live through Teams calls. So ultimately just taking that next step through things like Loop, through things like Teams, that we can start taking advantage of the solutions today. But if you can drive that adoption within your customers, they'll be able to take advantage more easily than new solutions in the future, rather than trying to do everything all at once, which may create a big change management issue or just organizational issue and just too much and just don't do any of it.
Yeah, you can just start to imagine the possibilities, like you said with the co-pilot in Teams. Like I can just imagine jumping onto a call and like what we're talking about now, and it documenting it out and creating a slide presentation off the back of our conversation, or as we talk, the what they it draws automatically something on the whiteboard. Like you start to it's that sort of AI technology is going to really enhance what we can do in the future. And I think for a lot of people, they struggle to. They're not conceptual thinkers; they're tangible thinkers inside MSPs. So until we start seeing more of those tangible realizations of what the technology is capable for, I think a lot of us are really going to struggle to piece that together to be able to productize anything. So again, I think I just reinforced that the money, the where the market, general small business market is at, it's probably going to go faster than what the MSPs are going to realize. And unless we're embedded into the clients to be providing them advice and enablement activities, we're just going to be cut out, and we're just not going to see. We're just going to be seen as the guys that fix the broken technology, not the guys that are enabling and leveraging technology to make people's lives better. So you start playing it with yourselves and getting your head around it, and then just start sharing those sort of thought leadership bubbles of how could this help your business, even if you're not providing any type of paid engagement at that point. There's still enough value there to set yourself up for the future.
Yeah, totally. And I guess, it's the old adage of eating your own dog food, which is usually pretty celebrated in the tech community. I think being a hard realist or pragmatic, probably a bit more positively put, around the application of the emerging technologies is something that's really wise to do for MSPs, right? So, say for example, there was a really good. I've just got it written in front of me. The syntax plugins that they were announcing at Build as well. It created a very utopian view of where you can use rich text-based language to analyze financial documents, extract deals that apply to what you've asked for. So, say opportunities worth over 200K and are going to be closing the next 3 months, to create a proposal fulfilling with those details from that spreadsheet. Then you can also attach on an e-signature for the contacts that are applicable to that and automatically send those out. So an example of how that would possibly work utilizing the Copilot and AI features to run through something that may take days if not weeks to put together, utilizing multiple teams, to cut that all together and send it out sort of instantly. Obviously, that's we've been in the business long enough to see flashy demo videos, and as much as we love them, when it comes down to the realities of when they're being put in place, sometimes that can be a little bit different and take a lot of adoption. So I think the gap between that utopian view and today, that's really an opportunity for our MSPs to be those thought leaders, understand it, and be comfortable in helping the customers understand the realities of how to get from A to B, and the change management and adoption required to get there when the technology's there as well.
It's an exciting space, but it's like everything we've faced before. Of what we've done for small business technologies, it takes a while for that promise to hit, and we need to know enough about it to guide our clients to the pragmatic realities of actually, you've seen the shiny demo. Well, this is actually what it can do for you. That's our true value that a lot of, especially a lot of MSPs don't really truly appreciate. That relation, we all say it, that our power is our relationships and our advice, but we don't actually value that in terms of charging for it. We don't value it in actually doing it deliberately, and leveraging that to grow our businesses. It's just a sort of a thing that we wear on our sleeve for pride that we've got that, and we don't need sales and marketing. But actually, if you be deliberate about it, there's a whole heap of money to be made, but also the impact that you can have on your clients is huge. And I think we're just seeing that shift of generation, and as the technology changes, the skills and capabilities that we need are going to dramatically change, and just need to be on the front foot.
Awesome. Because I think sort of pivoting away from the sort of build announcements at the moment, I think it raises a really good conversation around just the ever never ending change that comes with being a technology provider and how to best adapt to that change when it does emerge. So just thinking, so from my perspective, I was thinking about as I mentioned before, the baselines that partners are able to establish within their business, or the structures and processes that are put in place to be able to navigate change more easily and more sustainably. So like from the perspective of Microsoft 365, we obviously look to the reducing complexity, reducing amount of portals, reducing the amount of vendors required to fulfill requirements around productivity, modern work, and the security space, which you can then build upon with the favorite vendors that complement that ecosystem as well. Obviously, over in the academy side of things, helping partners build more sustainably and identify any of those blockers in their business is something that's pretty core to your offering. As a kind of understanding that we probably have people from different segments listening to this, where would you see as being sort of the first step if someone has identified that I don't have the best approach to be able to navigate change successfully? Where would I start my journey in identifying that and then sort of eating the elephant one bite at a time to kind of embrace the changes that come in the future?
I think I'd start with the identification piece because I think this is the most important. I don't think enough of us as small business owners I can identify that we have that sort of adoption issue and change management issue because we get so caught up in that day to day fighting fires, just delivering what we've done and trying to make sure we're delivering what we promise to our clients. So what I'd suggest, the easiest way to sort of see if you've got a problem is there's been some few key events for me in sort of the history of the MSP. I mentioned the SBS server to Office 365. If it took you to realize that I need to replace these servers and now I'm finding a solution, you're very reactive. The NCE changes was another prime example from a Microsoft perspective of I saw the partners that are very mature. As soon as it started launching, they went into discovery mode to understand what it is, and then make planned business decisions of how they're going to handle it. That wasn't the majority of the market. Majority of the market waited till basically it was happening, and you had no choice for us to do anything about it. So often those sort of trigger events show to me how you handle it and how you're reactive. And to me, that's the first behavior to change is need to flip from being reactive to proactive. And we know this is an MSP. This is what we're trying to deliver as a service is proactive services. So that plan and understanding starts first. And from there, if that awareness is let's do a SWOT. What are our strengths? What are our weaknesses? What are the opportunities and threats of how we see it today? So using our M365 modern work platform, most MSPs have only just started leveraging Teams and SharePoint because of COVID. Again, another reactive knee-jerk reaction. All of a sudden, the clients need a new solution. We had to scramble for it. So if we look at sort of that history, most people moved to Office 365 to move email away. That was it. It was already a bigger platform at that point, but that's pretty much all that we used it for. Then COVID with Teams and SharePoint. That's pretty much where the market stops. And even in Teams and SharePoint, we haven't quite gotten our heads around actually how to govern it, how to set it up in a modern workplace environment, not just a lift and shift moving files from a server into SharePoint and we're done. We haven't actually utilized anything to improve people's workflows and how they access files and how it's how to improve that experience. We've just lifted and shifted it. So from that space, again, just trying to start from the awareness point. What we need to do is sort of build, like everyone knows the whole Whitespace concept, is how about we start and plan out and go actually understand what's in in the Microsoft suite. And for most MSPs, I would typically go, well, let's look at business premium. It's the most cost-effective, comprehensive solution that provides so much value. What's actually in that, and what are we providing now, and what aren't we, and what would be the next logical step? So, is that sort of resonating with you, Aidan? If you're starting a business, would this sort of concept help you understand where your opportunities are?
Yeah, no, I think it was really good to sort of reverse engineer how we came to where we are in the market because, as you say, we do see quite a few of our partners that have just they've adjusted because of requirements in the market or requirements for external factors, which has led to some of them switching onto business standard or business basic just to get those core functionalities. And then over the years, they've acquired several different vendors that do different functions for cybersecurity or for networking or whatever it is to end up with the stack that they have today. And they may just call that the stack because it's how it's ended up rather than having the opportunity to reflect on how the business got here, where the opportunity is for change, and really reduce down the operational costs that it takes to put that stack together. So to your point, looking at the business premium stack, effectively, if you can justify the spend on Intune for device management and app management, which is pretty crucial to understanding what's got access to your network, and if you can justify Active Directory in order to get single sign-on MFA and a whole series of other sort of security components around the identity, if you add up the value of those add-ins, you're effectively getting the cybersecurity suite for free on the back end in order to either plug in any gaps that you have, provide it into sort of like your good, better, best model into your first two tiers, and then you can utilize, if you've got ones that you prefer on the back end, add that to your premium suite. There's a few different ways that you can start justifying the license that you may have thought was more expensive initially, but then once you break it down, can start stripping out sort of shadow IT that may be in the organization or different vendors that can do things like what Teams can do, what SharePoint can do, what email security can do. You're then reducing down not only the licensing cost, but then how much training needs to go into those members of staff to navigate those tools, how many processes you need to get in place in order to roll them out for your customers. And I know there's probably some mixed thoughts around the Microsoft 365 Lighthouse, for example, but if you see how far it's come in the past year as far as multi-tenancy administration of M365, it has come a long way, and Microsoft's investing pretty heavily to get that up to scratch with the other tools out there that do that function. So that's where I'm sort of seeing that. Obviously, it's a bit more on the M365 led rather than partner led conversation, but I think there are some real nuggets in there into how to set that baseline to then navigate that change, and then also reduce a lot of the costs that come with that.
Yeah, I think obviously you're an MS business manager, but you're trying to help our partners. If I sort of put a spin on where I see things, there was a few things that you triggered there, like Intune and the autopilot and the cybersecurity space, and we're talking about setting this sort of baseline. I come across a lot of partners that haven't actually set a baseline stack yet, and I don't really like the term stack because one thing, we're tying ourselves into delivering only one thing, and I know that's the purpose, but as we're transitioning into a new market, the idea of the old school MSP of we need to control everything and you need to be in this stack so we can support it, it doesn't translate to the modern cloud, modern workplace environment. We can't control anything. We don't own the infrastructure. We can't control shadow IT because anyone can jump onto the internet and buy whatever software they want and access on the cloud, and we won't even know. So we need to sort of change our thought process. And when I say not having a stack, what it actually means is we just need to understand more of the application layer and not be rigid on really dictating to people what the right software is. We need to transition ourselves into being able to provide the right advice to help them solve their problems. So when you were talking about like Intune and cybersecurity and things, one of the reasons why I don't think many people tap into it is they haven't had the time to, again, they're not being proactive in going, what's the next added value that I can provide to my clients, because we're trying to fix what's broken. And for me, Intune, if I was starting up a technology solutions partner these days, I wouldn't start an MSP, because I'd struggle to get the clients. What I would be building as a baseline is all my clients, irrelevant of size, would have Intune because it's not that expensive. The whole business premium is very cost effective when you actually unpack it. If you take a step back and actually go, here's all the value, here's all the solutions I can provide to my client. The license is very cheap in my perspective, from my perspective. And if you come in with that approach, it becomes a lot easier to sell to your clients as well. If you treat it as, oh, this is super expensive, you're going to put out those vibes, and your clients aren't going to feel, they're going to feel it's super expensive as well, because you're not actually just coming in and selling the value, and then it just happens. So that's one sort of nugget I'd say as I'm talking about this. But that sort of thought around Intune, I'd 100% do it, because not only would that make my support easier, because it's all of a sudden it's enabling a SOE environment inside our work from anywhere world, for one, and it means we can finally do what we've never been able to do in small business, and actually can create a SOE that can be managed easy. And then leveraging Azure AD as well and single sign-on, all of a sudden we have this more enabled workforce, because all of a sudden we can just buy a new laptop, they can sign in, and it's ready to go. How good is that? Let alone all the additional value of you being able to provide a more baked-in cybersecurity package. The problem is most people aren't doing Intune because they don't really understand it. They see it as this big beast. They see that there's so much work to get it up and running, but that's not really the case. There's so many templates now. There's so many there's tools to do it. There's Intune specialists that you can partner with for them to do it, and we don't see the long-term value of utilizing that sort of tool. Like if I might just pick a random example to exacerbate my point. You might have a 10-user site. You might traditionally charge, on average, $165 an hour to do that project. So, and because you don't have the skills, you might be quoting like 20 hours, and all of a sudden we're up at like a $4,000 project to implement Intune. In and of itself, that's not that expensive, and you should be able to easily sell that. But let's take the approach of, well, actually, if you've got you can see the value of using this differently and actually getting them on that sort of Azure AD and this modern workplace environment we're talking about, is why don't we just do that as a part of our onboarding? We could even give it for free, and we make money on the recurring license, the recurring service of actually managing it. That's another approach of doing it. Like, I don't like giving away money for that kind of stuff, but just to change the thought process there of, you can use that sort of loss leader approach to get more money on the long term there. And to me, there's just so much value for both sides leveraging this kind of technology in the modern world. And I just think a lot of us are still stuck in the old school AD and group policy, and haven't really taken the time to understand, well, actually that's disappeared. What happens when their server disappears and we've moved it to SharePoint? How are we then properly controlling the identity and the SOE of the end user experience?
Yeah, and I think that kind of covers off a lot of what we were talking about earlier around doing that discovery of how the business is working, also doing the discovery of how your clients are utilizing you. As you mentioned, using loss leaders isn't usually something that I'd advocate for, but if you're looking at the lifetime value of your customers, and you're getting, say, for example, that $4,000 project, and you're shifting them to a per user or a per device model, whatever it is, with all of the services value baked into that, you can then do the maths pretty quickly of, okay, if my average customer is going to be with me for, say, 2 or 3 years, probably a bit more in most MSPs, they've got pretty long-term customers. You can figure out where the tipping point of that profitability is pretty quickly. And if you're delivering those services well, there should be a pretty healthy margin rate within that per user model as well, especially if you are utilizing things like, as we mentioned, business premium, where you can reduce down a lot of those baseline licensing costs. and then reducing down a lot of that operational costs through the features that they provide. So it provides a pretty good vision as to, as we mentioned, I think the sort of the underlying theme of all this is how do you take the consideration or the time to consider in your business to reduce down the resources that go into doing today, so that you can then have the time to not only work on your business but provide the vision of what's coming next, and have a healthy and sustainable way to incorporate those solutions and add them to your skills to then roll out. And if you've got that really healthy profit per user model, you may be able to shift that in there and increase the price, or reduce the operational costs that go into it to maintain that healthy margin along the way. So yeah, I think that's some really great advice on how to start tackling these issues, and that's to look at the vision or the light at the end of the tunnel. We have to sort of embrace what the darkness is today, to use kind of like probably a pretty grim analogy, or grim, colourful analogy anyway. But yeah, no, I think that being mindful of the time as well there, James. I'm not too sure if you had any sort of closing remarks, but I'll let you go in a second.
Like, I think if we've spoken about a lot, and I think if I was to say for anyone walking away from this conversation that has gotten some value out of it, I think there's a lot of value of going and looking at. Most of us have M365 is one of the core components of our stack that we provide our clients. It's pretty much become it's ubiquitous in small to medium-sized businesses, that the majority of businesses are in M365. Is then going, well, we've got this. What actually are their capabilities, and what are our capabilities that we can focus on next? If we don't have a cybersecurity solution at the moment, well, maybe a good place to start is just utilizing M365 to get some of the setting up a baseline package, and then looking at expanding that out after. Maybe it is better Teams and SharePoint adoption. Maybe it's we need to focus on Intune. Just using that $4,000 project a month as an example. If you've got 50 10-seat clients and you can go sell $4,000 projects, we're talking 200K in straight labor that you could do as a next round of professional services projects. While that's reduced over time. There's a lot there, and I think just treating it more like Whitespace, our traditional Whitespace stack approach, I think will help a lot of MSPs change their thoughts and start to identify those new opportunities. So that's what I'd hope that people would walk away from with today.
Oh, fantastic. And so after this, I'll put, I really want to share that Syntex demo video to see what people's opinions are of it. So I'll put that in the comments after we post this up as well. If anything has resonated today and you want to continue that conversation, obviously reach out to your channel account manager who can help in person, but also link you through to the resources that can help here at Pax8. Or feel free to reach out to myself on LinkedIn. And James, I assume that you're happy for people to reach out to yourself as well.
Yeah, more than happy. And if follow us on LinkedIn, we'll keep sharing things to help you guys grow.
Perfect. And yeah, just to close off, as I said before, it's end of financial year, so I understand everyone's really busy. We're in the heart of planning at the moment, so expect to see a lot of great resources, events, webinars coming up in the next 6 to 12 months, just to make sure we can start breaking down this conversation so you can get some really tangible, really practical resources on how to start delivering them in your business. So yeah, thanks everyone who's made it to the end. Really appreciate it. And I'll check in with you again soon, James.
Thanks for having me. Look forward to it.
Thanks, mate. See you later.